Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Small Business Showcase. I'm your host, Garrett Rhoads, the General Manager of Fusion Workplaces Allentown. We just have some notes to go over here. But in any case, this is our Small Business Showcase. We want you to enjoy some fun stories and learn from local business owners, professionals, and tradespeople. This will be a weekly show, so it'll be a good time. So make sure you take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast if you're listening to us out there in listener land. In any case, today my guest is a friend of mine named Nate Kline of Infradapt. Nate and I met probably 12 years ago in the networking space, and we've gotten along ever since. And today he even runs one of our chapters of the Eastern Pennsylvania Business Owners Network. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nate Kline of Infradapt.
Thank you, Garrett, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, and we're trying to take this to the next level and get all of our local businesses involved and get a spot on some airtime on the show here. But appreciate what you're doing for our local business community.
Thanks. Well, that's what we try to do here at Fusion Workplaces. It's always a lot of fun. In any case, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Nate, and again, I've known you for a while, but one of the things I don't know is how on earth did you get into the IT field?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's kind of loaded. I actually had no prior desire to be in technology. I went to school, a local high school called Northwestern Lehigh. You might have heard of it. We're kicking some tail in the sports arena. We just won districts last night in the girls, boys soccer, and field hockey. But I went to...
How did you do in canoeing?
Canoeing? I don't know. I heard about the canoe team and how they're doing. But ended up going to college at Bloomsbury State School, Bloomsburg University. Loved it. Got a degree in business management, and didn't know where I was going to go with it. But I just knew that sales was probably the best place for me to start out. So I did what every other kid did back in 2007, look at the newspaper for a job. We still did that, by the way. And I ended up...
What's a newspaper?
Yeah, right? Now it's Monster and Indeed and all that online, but we did that all without any online resources. This was all, black and white, right? So I responded to an ad in the newspaper for a small startup technology firm called Infradapt, and they were at the time located in Easton. So I lived in New Tripoli, which was very far. It was a 45-minute drive each way. So that was kind of a deterrence. But, I said I wanted to focus on the future and where business was going to go, not where it was at that current point in time. And, technology was becoming more mainstream and more of a vital, essential tool in business. So I thought that it was going to be a good place to learn the ropes, earn my stars and stripes, and make a career out of it. So, I got learned. Over the first couple years in business, I started learning the general sales principles and business in general, and the technology piece of it came later. I knew nothing really about technology. I know my family had a Windows 95 gateway back when I was going to high school, and that's. I still typed up papers on a typewriter, by the way. So I'm
a typewriter.
Yeah,
like my first PC at least had Windows 3.1, but I used a Microsoft Word.
Yeah. Well, we weren't a wealthy household, so we had to make do with what we had. And I remember my first paper was typewritten. And not on a computer, it was a typewriter. But then we transitioned to a gateway, and from there, that was my first introduction into technology, and from there, I just knew, that it was going to be integrated into the world and into every business and every home. So I thought it was a good industry and sector to get behind. There's a lot of them out there that are good and that are future-proof. And I thought that the IT space was one of those. So that's to answer it with a long-winded answer. That is why I chose to remain there and get it into the tech field.
So basically, what I heard was you figured that sales is for you, and of course, knowing you like I do, yes, sales is definitely for you. And you can always tell a good salesperson out there because you're usually really easy to talk to. But you just kind of stumbled into IT because, they were hiring.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, and you've developed quite a reputation for yourself ever since, actually. But I do want to ask one question, and I know I've asked you this before, but to be honest, I never really actually understood the answer to your question. What exactly is it that Infradapt does?
That's a good question. We're a managed IT service provider. So we are essentially the outsourced IT department for schools, municipalities, private sector, healthcare, insurance companies, professional services firms, engineers, architects. We either are their dedicated point of contact and help desk for all IT issues, or we co-manage larger environments with existing IT teams. And this includes infrastructure, both locally as well as hosted, so we can host servers from our private cloud that we built out, or we can manage your local infrastructure with whatever you have on site. But we also provide ancillary business services like phone services, wireless. Security and surveillance is really big right now, so security cameras in schools. We've done a huge rollout for a large marijuana farm, actually.
Cannabis.
Sorry,
Cannabis.
Cannabis.
Right? Yeah.
Medical marijuana. That was probably one of the coolest installations I've ever seen and done. But I'm on the sales side. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cheech and Chong. But anyway, yeah. I just thought that the sky was the limit. There was so much opportunity out there because technology became more of a vital requirement, like a necessity to operations. It wasn't a nicety. It wasn't just like hey, let's toy around with some technology. No, it became ingrained in the way we do business today, whereas 20 years ago that wasn't the case. So,
no, I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, my kids are 23 and 21 now, and as you can imagine, over the last number of years, I've spent a fair bit of time on college campuses, and it's amazing. Like 90% of the students walk around like this. They're not looking where they're going. They're not paying attention to their surroundings. So if you ever need a new cell phone, here's a tip. Go to a college campus and just wait for someone to come by with the phone that you want, because they're not paying attention. You can snatch it from them, but you just need to be able to run really fast. So pick somebody who looks slow. But in any case, I say all that to say, with these even just with our cell phones these days, if your internet were to go down, or people lose their phone for 2 hours and they lose their minds. Like, I don't know what to do. But of course, so much about what we do is here now.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I remember back when they were getting introduced in 2003, right as I was graduating high school, the first iPhone dropped. And I looked at it and said, there's no way that that's going to reside in every single person pocket in America. There's no way. And I said the same thing about the personal computer. When Michael Dell first introduced all that, he was like, my vision is a desktop computer in every single household across America. And before you knew it, he talked it into fruition. It happened. And just like that, within a matter of a year or two, it became commonplace to have a smartphone in your pocket or your purse. And I say that because, everybody has one. And I was like, $80 a month at the time seemed like I was only 18. I thought that was a tremendous boatload of money. I would never pay that. And, again, I grew up in an era where I had to be home by dark. And I remembered everybody's 7-digit phone number, because this was before we had to use the area code, by heart. So I could just call and check in and be home by dark. But, so to me, I couldn't fathom the fact that everybody was going to have a phone in their pocket and pay that $80 a month. But here we are today.
$80 a month?
Yeah.
Dude, you need a new carrier.
Yeah, right.
I got 5 lines for $150 a month.
Yeah, my wife...
Unlimited everything.
Yeah, exactly. We're stuck with Verizon.
You are?
Yeah, well, not really.
I was going to say, save yourself some money. Go somewhere else.
You ask my wife, we are.
All right. So you mentioned that Infradapt really kind of specialized in IT services. So is it safe for me to assume that you can kind of do it all? Like, let's say I'm going to open up a new office, right? Because that's what we do here at Fusion. We have offices. So I could just hire you and say, okay, these are the software needs I'm going to have. I'm going to run these bits of software. I'm going to need X number of machines. And I just pass it off to you, and you guys can do the installation, the setup, the training, the management.
You got it.
When my computer goes down, I can give you a call and go, hey, help, I'm an idiot and I don't know what to do. Right?
Yeah. So we cater to the 10 to 200 size shops with 10 to 200 employees. So, if it was just 1 or 2 employees, we typically would refer you out to another entity. But yes, to answer your question, if it was a new office build out, We sit down to do a preliminary assessment and discovery of your findings on your needs and requirements from a software perspective, hardware and infrastructure perspective, security perspective, policy and compliance perspective, and then we put together a customized package based on everything you need, whether it's need a phone system or we need wireless, we have maybe some cameras, security cameras we need installed in the parking lots and in the vestibules. So those are all the things we do as the pre-sales discovery phase of our business. But yeah, we customize everything to meet the needs of our clients.
Okay. And so now for some of the fun questions. What is it that you like best about what you do?
That's easy. Serving my client base and making sure that we make technology go quiet for them so they can focus on their core business and do what they do best. Because their success is our success. And we see technology, obviously I mentioned earlier that it's a necessity to do business, but we don't want it to be a hindrance, right? We don't want technology to get in the way of the core business and prevent you from getting your job done. I've created a lot of really close personal relationships with my clients to the point where they know who my wife's name, they know my kid's name, and it's a lot like our relationship, over the years where we've, grown close as friends, not just business acquaintances. That's the type of relationship I have with my clients. So I would say being their point of contact for anything IT. I love being able to solve problems and just be there from a technical backing. Even though I'm not the technical guy, right? I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not the one configuring the routers and deploying the hardware. We have a whole team of engineers that do that. But I know enough to talk about it from a business perspective and identify when there's pain points and challenges, how we can solve them with technology. And if we can, I'll be straight and transparent with them and say there's other things out there for that.
So if I'm hearing you, basically what you're saying is you like to be the liaison.
Yeah.
So that clients that Infradapt has, when they have a problem and they call the phone number, they get somebody that answers the phone.
Yes.
Like, hello, Infradapt, this is Sally speaking. Can I help you? Instead of your call is important to us. If you'd like to contact billing, press 5. If you'd like to wait in purgatory, press 8. If you'd like to continue in Swahili, press 9. And if you'd like the company directory, I don't have time for that stuff. So you can actually call you, a human being, and say, hey, I have a problem, and you can make sure it gets fixed, right?
Yeah, we have a help desk for that. So our help desk is there to react to situations and urgent, immediate needs that our clients have. With me, I'm more of a strategic account executive, and for the strategic planning side of things and how technology interfaces with business, that's really what does it for me. Honestly, problem solving at a very high level. And we're talking C-suite, right? We're talking to the business owners of a company and what keeps them up at night. And if technology is even mentioned in that statement, that's what gets me going, right? And keeps me going, is the ability to help them solve their problems by leveraging technology and streamlining their business, making it more efficient, making workflows better, making processes better, and enabling them with the right tools to be able to go and deliver on what they do best.
All right. Which brings me to my next question. The one I always really like to ask, because we all have something in our professions that we don't like to do, right? We have to take the bad with the good, right? Mm-hmm. Like in my case, I love running this place. It's a wonderful thing. It's the company I work for is great. But I'm not into running reports and completing paperwork. It's just not my forte. So the question I have for you is, what don't you like about what you do? There has to be an aspect to it that can be aggravating or annoying or just bothersome.
Well, honestly, I don't have that type of personality that looks at the world in those lenses. So yes, life can get in the way and you can run into some hard times, but I'm a solution guy. I'd like to focus on the positive things and the solution of whatever problems arise. But to answer your question, I would say, trouble doesn't schedule time in our industry and in life. Trouble doesn't schedule time is a saying we use very frequently in our industry and in our business, because we have times when you plan and do all the proper things to get a client on board, and then there's almost always something you don't think of that hits you from left field. And you have to adapt, and you have to scramble, and you have to, come to terms and resolution and find a remedial path toward resolution when maybe the expectation wasn't properly set, or maybe you didn't have all the information on the front side to set the proper expectation. That is definitely the most challenging thing, is when I let somebody down. I hate letting people down, because I'm always the kind of guy that likes to look for solutions, and when I don't have one, I think that is probably the worst part of the job, is when I have to look at them and say, sorry, I can't help you here, or something happened where we're going to need to add this, and they weren't expecting it.
Right, but it's a situation beyond your control.
Some things, yes. Most of the time, yes, it is beyond my control.
All right. So before we continue, though, I do just want to take a moment and remind our viewers and our listeners, depending on whether or not you're listening to our podcast or watching us on our YouTube channel. But if you're not watching us on YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. Go to YouTube, look up Fusion Workplaces Allentown, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast, because we're going to be doing a lot of these things. Give us a little like, maybe, if you think we're doing a good job. That'd be great. The other question I have for you, of course, I have many questions, but the next one I want to ask you, of course, is what are some of the unrealistic expectations that people might have about your industry? Like, I know as a consumer of IT that if something's not working right, I just have this blanket assumption that if I call somebody like you, or your team, if it were, that you'll just be able to come in and fix it. Like, how do you not know how to fix it? And do you have people that really kind of have a wildly unreasonable expectation of what you can and can't do?
Sometimes, yeah. Because most people, because technology is very complex, there's many layers to it, and oftentimes when there's an issue, it may not be us. It may be the internet's down. It may be the third-party carrier, or whatever the case is. Maybe it's not us, but they automatically assume that it is us because it's technology related. So that could be challenging. But a lot of times it's just about educating the consumer and the end users and your clients on, what our role is, and helping them further define technology in general, like breaking it down, reducing it to ridiculousness. I like to say that a lot, because oftentimes it's so complex, you really don't need to look too deeply into it and get too deep into the weeds. Keep it at a high level. Just understand the basic points of who we are, what we do, and how technology works, so you can better be prepared to react to situations. And then they can also, this will help on the flip side, is educating the consumer so they're more aware and more understanding of when things happen, because in technology, a problem is bound to arise. It's going to happen. It's Murphy's Law. It's like, it's not if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen, and how are you going to react. So and Murphy's Law says it's going to happen at the most inopportune time, and that means it's going to be a fire, and you need to react immediately. We get that a lot. So a lot of times it's just a matter of peeling back the layers of the onion to really understand the root cause of the issue, because a lot of times they don't even know what's wrong, and they'll just start venting their frustrations. And then the more we dig, the more we find, the more we find, the more we dig, and then it come to find out that it's really not anything that we're doing wrong. It's a lot of it comes down to educating the end user on whatever it is, that particular process, or software or access or whatever it is.
Yeah, don't you refer to that as an ID10T error?
No, I never refer to anybody like that.
Well, I make a lot of those myself, so I'm familiar with it.
PEPCAC, right?
What?
The problem exists between the keyboard and the chair, PEPCAC? No.
What is it called?
PEPCAC.
PEPCAC?
Yeah.
So
problem exists between keyboard and chair, or chair and keyboard.
All right, see, we learned something valuable today, right? But no, actually, their last answer dovetailed into the next question I wanted to ask you. Tell us about the biggest disaster that you had to go in and fix. What was like your biggest or craziest emergency call?
This is actually a good one. I have a really good example. This was actually back a long time ago when I first got into my career. When I first got into my career, I was learning the ropes and learning. So we have a very complex offer, like I mentioned. We do voice, data, security, compliance, policy, all that. this is going to tie to a voice opportunity that we had. We like to standardize on unrestricted technologies, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of proprietary technologies out there that will lock you into their model and their hardware, and you can only use their stuff, and then they hit you every year with annual maintenance fees, and it becomes very expensive for the total cost of ownership. We like the freedom of unrestricted technologies and the flexibility to go and meet the utility value of the business need with technology, and not the other way around, just to pick a piece of hardware to solve a problem. We don't like solving technology problems, business problems with just throwing technology at it. We like to look at it from the business perspective. So we've standardized on a very flexible phone system. It's the Swiss Army knife of phone systems. You can use any open source handset. You can use any type of infrastructure to run your phone system on. In fact, the phone system was designed by a college student in his dorm room that was sick of the way the telcos operated and how there wasn't any open platforms that people could develop around. So back in early 2000s, late 90s, the early 2000s, the platform Asterisk was launched. And we are a big Asterisk shop, and long story, I'll finish it up. We engaged with a public school down in the Philly area. I brought them along the whole sales process. This was very early on in my career, about 2009.
And they were looking for a phone system?
Yes,
okay.
And their IT guy was looking for a phone system. I spent months educating him on the platform, educating him on all the advantages and things that you could do with it. And then one day he went quiet and didn't answer or return my calls. Later to find out that he tried to roll it out himself. And if you know anything about open source, it's not just because it's open doesn't mean anybody can manage it and roll it out. So they end up calling us right before school starts the one year, on their knees, like, okay, we screwed up. We're in a lurch. We need your help. So we ended up coming in, cleaning up after the fact, cleaning up the mess, redoing all the dial plans and all the configurations that he had made. And we got him back online right before school started. It was a huge success story. They still remain a client to this day.
I'm kind of familiar with that, having a background in real estate investing and rehabbing houses. The number of times that I've gone through a house where the seller says, oh yeah, they watched 3 seasons of Flip or Flop, so they're thinking they're going to do their own renovations, and you walk through and the house is kind of sort of renovated, and they think it adds value to the property because they've already started the work, and much like you pointed out, I got to look at them and go, no, unfortunately it doesn't, because I am literally going to have to rip out and redo everything that you did wrong, which is the whole project. So yeah, definitely. So you find in your industry too that people, they try to do it on their own, but hey, know where your strengths are. If you're not really sure, don't try to guess.
Yeah, yeah, it happens, because again, we either do a fully outsourced and managed model where they don't have any dedicated IT resources and they rely on us for that whole thing, but then we also cater to larger organizations and entities that have an internal IT, and that can be where you kind of butt heads a little, or they may have a difference of opinion on how to do things, or they think they can go and do it a better way, or that can be somewhat challenging when we're dealing with other people's egos and ways of doing things. So yeah, it happens, but we do our job as IT sales professionals in trying to identify and understand all of those little quirks and nuances on the front side before we enter into an engagement. That's the key, right? Yeah. You don't want to find out after the fact. So you try to do your due diligence on the front side as best you can.
Gotcha. So I'm down to just 2 questions for the rest of this broadcast before we get into our closing. And these are a little bit, I don't know, maybe self-serving, if you will, but it is important, just so people know. What is an ideal client for you?
Well, that's a good question. An ideal client is a local entity. Actually, it doesn't even have to be local, but I think it makes it easier when they're here in the Lehigh Valley. Anybody from 50 to 100 employees that maybe have somebody there that understands technology, but it's not their full-time job, and they want to hire and outsource it to a company like Infradapt to come in and become their IT department. And typically an industry that has some regulatory compliance, like healthcare, local government, so you're talking townships, boroughs, municipalities, city government, housing authorities, water authorities, education, schools, charter schools, public schools, private schools, higher education. We deal with all of those entities. And then on the private side of things, so the industries that are regulated on the private side are like, healthcare, insurance. A new mandate was just introduced, the Data Security Act in Pennsylvania, for all insurance companies and carriers now have to adhere to PITSA. So that's a good industry for us. PITSA, the Pennsylvania Insurance Data Security Act is what it stands for.
Kind of like HIPAA.
Yeah, you got it.
Which is the healthcare part.
Yes.
And then what about financial planners and FINRA?
Well, that's a good question. So the firms, the larger ones, yes. If you're an independent, then no, because we have minimum, per user seat requirements, if you will. We typically stop it at 10. That's a cutoff. We'll entertain, 5 or 7 or 8 employees. But typically we have to, there's a lot of work, especially if it's a regulated industry. They have to adhere to the same rule set as the 100, 200, 2,000 person shop. So, you have to do the same amount of work, but collect a lot less money. So that's why we have to,
Right, so that does make sense, but I knew to ask that because here at Fusion with our offices and whatnot, we have counselors here, financial planners, accountants, lawyers, that sort of thing, and some of them have regulatory agencies that they have to answer to.
Yeah.
So here's my big bit of tech for my end on this is I know the internet we have here is everyone who has an office has their own private VLAN. Or virtual local area network, which means their bandwidth is their bandwidth and nobody else's. And that allows us to be HIPAA compliant and FINRA compliant, and I guess now, what is that, PITSA? PITSA compliant, so that we have that set up, which a lot of office spaces don't think about that, but that's kind of where my knowledge of IT begins and ends.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm picking up what you're putting down, though. It's good that you're thinking about that. It means you're ahead of the game, I would say, from that compliance standpoint. And you cater to a number of sectors and industries, and not just one. One build fits the mold, or whatever they say. So yeah, that's good that you guys are thinking about that. It's important.
Sounds great. And my last, go for it.
You're going to see more and more of that from here on out. It's not going to be less and less compliance and regulatory compliance requirements. It's going to be more and more. Over in Europe, they have the GDPR, which is national governance set of compliance requirements that all businesses must adhere to. Here in America, we have it parted out by industry, like healthcare and banking and finance and insurance. But one day we may see some federal regulation where all businesses must adhere to a standard set of rules.
It'll be interesting to see when that day comes, but
looking forward to it. It's just a great business opportunity for me.
All right, and the last one's really easy, right? And that is, if people are interested in more about what you do, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Best way to contact me would be either shoot me an email at N as in November, period, Kline, Kline, at Infradapt, and that's spelled INFRADAPT, Infradapt.com. Or you can hit me on my cell at 484-330-1750.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. So before we get into our closing, I always like to have a quote, right?
Yes.
So you ready for the quote on our inaugural show, Small Business Showcase?
Absolutely.
It is often better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt. Thank you, Benjamin Franklin. All right, so we'll always have some of these on our shows, folks, but a little bit of closing announcements here. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Fusion Workplaces Allentown, the Lehigh Valley's premier private office business address and co-working space, and the LegacyLandSociety.com, where you can give the gift that lasts forever. And also make sure you take a moment, subscribe to our shows, get on our YouTube channel, because you're going to want to see the interviews that are coming down the pike. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to send us an email to allentown@fusionworkplaces.com. And that's allentown@fusionworkplaces.com with the subject line SBS Podcast. So, Nate, I just want to take a moment for thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule today.
Absolutely.
To come on by and share your knowledge and wisdom with our listeners and our viewers, depending on how they're consuming this broadcast. And I'm sure you'll back me up on this in closing, that we want to stress the importance of networking in the business community. No matter where you are, you could be listening or watching us from anywhere, not just a little pocket of eastern Pennsylvania where we happen to be. But definitely get into networking. Find out where those networking opportunities are. You can go to meetup.com is a great place to find local groups, or perhaps your local Chamber of Commerce is another good one. I know you're an ambassador for the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
So Nate's always out there at the chamber events, so definitely go out and visit those. Also, I know that I founded the Eastern Pennsylvania Business Owners Network 14 years ago, which is another business networking group. Again,
which is how we met.
Lehigh Valley, which is how we met. Yeah. Like back in the day when we had the breakfast at the Willows.
The Willows.
And for those of you not from our area, the Willows restaurant has been closed and bulldozed under for 10 years. That's how long ago this goes. But in any case, Nate now also runs one of our chapters for EPBON. That's our Western Lehigh chapter, which meets on second Wednesdays at Carrabba's in Dorneyville. We also want to thank our friends over at networklehighvalley.com. If you're ever looking for networking opportunities in and around the Lehigh Valley area, that's a great website. Our friend Seth Rubin finally put that together. And the irony of it is, over the last 10 or 12 years, a lot of us in the networking space had the same idea, and we talked about how great it would be if somebody built a website where all the different networking opportunities were. And Seth was the one person who went, well, let me go do it.
Took the bull by the horn, said, thank you, thank you, mahalo for that.
Yeah, so if you're listening to us, definitely check out networklehighvalley.com. It is free to subscribe, and it will tell you where all the opportunities to go are. So we'll see you on our next show of the Small Business Showcase here at the Fusion Workplaces Allentown Studios. We'd like to say goodbye, and thanks for listening, and have a profitable day. We'll see you next go-round. Bye now.